happy that you're here to focus on preparing for your upcoming college admissions process by being here tonight with us. So I'll introduce myself and I'll also introduce Anna as well. But my name is Lindsay and I'm an independent college counselor here at Moon Prep. I previously worked as a writer and an SAT, ACT tutor for about 5 years or so. And now I work at Moon Prep one-on-one with students to help them raise their academic profile. I really love working with students to help create a compelling personal statement and helping them emerge as a stronger writer. If you've been on our YouTube channel before, you've probably seen I've interviewed some other admissions officers at colleges, medical schools, students at medical school students as well as other leaders in the university and medical school admission industry. And that's something that we really try and focus on. So if you haven't, please subscribe and like our page so you can see more great interviews from us. But for now, I'll let Anna introduce herself as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anna. I have actually worked as a high school counselor for over 15 years, kind of in all different rural areas, more of the larger schools. And then I've also worked at a Division I college for a couple of years before I came to join Moon Prep. I really enjoy working with kids to help kind of plan out their future and give them the best chance for success. So when we're talking about Moon Prep, it's basically a one-on-one guidance through the admission process, and the working through Zoom and remotely gives us the opportunity to work with students from all over. So we're not just limited to a specific area. We can even work internationally, which is great because we like to, help of all different areas. And then our specialty is definitely the direct medical program, the BSMD. We have probably the majority of our students working in these programs, but we also have several students applying to just strictly Ivy League undergrad programs. But basically the elite, very competitive programs where you may need a little help, just making sure everything is polished and ready to go, just having that second pair of eyes to check over everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so our contact info is on the page. So we'd really love to work with you too, if it's one-on-one throughout the process. And if you have already started working on your college applications, we do have an application review that's perfect for you. It's $4.99. And with this, you get detailed feedback and suggestions on your personal statement and the supplemental essays for one school of your choice. And if you want to add more schools, you totally can for $1.99. And so after you incorporate this feedback, one of our counselors will do a final review of the personal statement essay and the supplemental essays. And so we do have two different counselors doing this. Both of them are really experienced. One is a med school student herself right now, really experienced going through the application process. And if you're a non-BSMD student, we have one that's geared towards non-BSMD students as well. So either way, you're going to be in really strong hands to get you some advice. And they both have experience working with high-level students to get them into super competitive schools. Once you've gone through the review process, there'll be another Zoom desktop sharing call where you'll get to pick the application platform of your choice. If it's coalition, whatever it might be, and they'll walk you through it. They'll look at your activity list, they'll look at your honors, they'll look at kind of every single aspect of your application platform so that you can make sure that everything is up to date, that you're submitting the strongest application possible. And so if you want to take advantage of that, you can email me directly. I'll put my email down here, and it was on the previous slide. But Lindsay at Moon Prep, or you can just go to our website, moonprep.com, and find some more information about how to contact us. But let's get into the good stuff.
Okay, so direct medical programs, there's several different types of these. You'll hear us refer to them as BSMD, BAMD, BSDO, BADO. So basically what these are undergraduate institutions are partnering with medical schools, and these students are guaranteed that they complete their undergraduate studies and then continue to the partner medical school. These are some of the most competitive programs that you can look into for continuing your education. So for a high school student, You need to know that you are 100% committed to becoming a doctor. That's going to be the first thing. And then if you are, a direct medical program may be a good choice for you. Students can get accepted into medical school at the same time as the undergrads, which is obviously an advantage and saves a lot of time and effort in the future. You basically don't have to go through that long application into med school, which, I mean, it's stressful. It takes months, the studying for the MCAT. I mean, it is an overwhelming process. So you're getting all of that out of the way. So they're guaranteed the seat as long as they meet the minimum academic and program requirements. And those are really going to depend per school. So you need to kind of look into those. Usually it's just a minimum GPA. Some will have a minimum MCAT score if it is required at all, but it's usually not a super high score. It's usually around an average, above average. Wouldn't you say, Lindsay?
Mm-hmm.
It's not, they're not like so hard to reach that it's just unattainable.
Yeah.
So combined programs usually last for 8 years. So that's going to be 4 years at the undergrad, 4 years at the medical school. There are some accelerated options that you can do in 7 years, and some of them even 6. So you really need to pay attention because each program is different. Usually those will definitely say accelerated, but if you see like the 3+4, the 3+3, that usually tells you that it's an accelerated program and not the typical 8 years. And honestly, it's almost impossible to stay on top of all of the changes that are happening. There are colleges that are canceling their programs, their direct medical programs. And at the same time, there are new programs popping up constantly. So Lindsay does a fantastic job of researching all of that and keeping us all like on top of all the information for all the schools and the programs around the US. So if you want to look at avoiding the hassle of applying to medical school, you're 100% sure that this is the profession for you. Medical school has always been competitive, but in recent years, it's just getting more and more competitive. So the kids need every advantage that they can get.
For sure. And if you are a younger student and kind of planning ahead, there is a book that we wrote. We put out our first edition last year. We just put out our second edition. Again, I'll put the link in the chat, but you can look it up by checking out BSMD Programs, a comprehensive guide. And this one has a ton of advice. And so if you are younger, it's got advice on how to build your resume. If you're older and working on your essays, it's got advice on how to do interview prep or essay prep. It's got a complete list of all the programs that we update every year. I think it ends up being like 300, 250 pages or something like that. Tons of chapters, tons of information covering everything from resume to scholarships. We have a lot of interviews we've done with BSMD program directors as well. So a lot of insider information. So check out our Amazon book. And if you're interested in learning a little bit more about BSMD programs, you can get it print, you can get it on Kindle. And if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can get it for free via that app too. And we sporadically do promotions too, where we can give it away for free. So check and follow us on our mailing list, and we'll keep you updated when we give it for free next. Okay. But let's get into kind of the good stuff too, which is which option of applying early is right for you, because it's insane to believe it, but the deadlines are right around the corner. And so we're going to cover some, mostly focusing on the early admissions. And we're going to give at least like a general overview of what they mean first, just to make sure everyone's on the same page. And so the 3 different ways of applying early is early decision, early action, and restrictive early action. And of course, they don't make it easy because each one has its own rules. But Anna is going to explain that extensively for us.
Okay, so the first one we kind of want to look into is the early decision. This is a binding, so you need to be very specific when you are choosing to do early decision to a school. You can only apply to one school for early decision. And if you get into that school, you are obligated to attend. So unless there is just some kind of emergency that you are not able to attend any school, you are basically saying, if I get in, I am attending this college. So this can really help showcase your interest, but you need to make sure you know the rules. The deadline is usually very early November, November 1st, November 15th. This is going to be your number one choice university, like top choice dream school. You can only apply to one early decision. The rest of the colleges, you can apply early action or regular admission, but not restrictive early action. So we'll talk about that one in just a minute. So when you send your application, you and your parents have to sign an agreement. And then actually your high school counselor has to sign an agreement as well, saying that you realize if you are offered admission that you will be attending. And the high school counselor is actually not allowed to submit any more transcripts after you are accepted. The thing that is really nice about early decision also is you will start getting decisions in December, mid-December. So you find out very soon. And then if you are admitted, you have to withdraw any other applications that you have already submitted and you have out there. You just inform the college of your acceptance, send a non-refundable deposit. And that's going to be way before like the May 1st, where usually it's like the cutoff for most undergrad schools and most regular decisions. Usually in a few weeks of them notifying you, you'll have to let them know that you are withdrawing your applications and you are sending your deposits in and going to go ahead and start sending them money. So why would students apply to ED? It can be very strategic. But for right now, are there any questions on like the rules of early decision?
And I see one question kind of about early admissions. Are they for undergrad, not for combined programs? Don't worry, we're going to get into this a lot because there are some programs that have exceptions. And so there are some programs that do have kind of the ED option. But even if you are doing BSMD programs, you'll still be doing traditional schools. You still will doing maybe some schools EA or even restrictive early action or early decision. We're going to get into that later. But yeah, traditionally, most of them will be focused mostly on your traditional schools.
So the early admissions is honestly, most of the schools that are doing BSMD, you're looking at the early admissions deadlines just because the different programs will have different deadlines. I actually have a student that already had an October 1st deadline for one BSMD school. He was round one, but so he was early. But just know they come fast. You have to apply earlier than the regular deadline. The advantage, you find out a little bit early whether you're accepted or not. Most schools, November 1st, again, November 15th, but there are some that are, I've only seen the one October 1st, but I have seen a couple more that are October 15th. So that's 2 full months before. And what we do not want students to do is on, a week before, throw an essay together just to get the early deadline in. You have to plan ahead for these to make sure that you have a competitive, strong application. And then also, if you are planning on doing the early action, you need to watch the dates on your ACT or SAT because you're not going to be able to submit those later test dates. They're not going to get your scores in time. So September is probably going to be about the latest, maybe very early October, but I would not count on that 100%. So you really need to plan out your junior year, probably taking ACT, SAT fall, and then maybe taking another one late fall, very early spring. And then if you need to retake again, you could do late spring, summer, something like that. But you just don't want to get in a bind where you're trying to get all of your information, your essays. It's a lot to gather up, just information to kind of gather and organize. So you want to make sure you have an early start on it. Another thing you need to think of if you are doing early action, letters of recommendation. You're not going to get a good letter if you go and ask someone and say, I need it by Friday. It's just, they're not going to put a lot of effort. So juniors, you can really ask at the end of the year because you're fresh on their mind. They just had you, the relationships are there. They know like how you performed in class. So that is great. If not, please ask like in September sometime. By October 1st, definitely. You need to have your letters of recommendation lined up. And then the personal statements, work on those during the summer. It's so much easier if you can just get it out of the way. It's done. Once, the applications start opening, you can work on your supplementals, your
Uh-oh. Can you guys still hear us? Just me? I think we lost Anna. I think you guys can still hear me though, right? You guys let me know. Kind of looks like it. Okay, Anna is frozen. It's not just me. Okay, I've had a lot of computer problems today, so I thought it was me. That's okay. I'll take over a little bit, and we'll see if she rejoins us. Yay, glad you guys can hear me. Not exactly sure where we left off, but I'll just keep on going. I think she was talking about restrictive early action. Okay, we lost Anna. That's okay. You still got me. I'll take over. So I'll talk a little bit about restrictive early action. I think that's about where we left off. Perfect. Good. Thank you. What a mess. This is just the day. This is exactly how the day has gone for me today. But we'll talk a little bit about restrictive early action because we're going to just complicate it a little bit. It's a combination of early action and early decision almost. This one is also called single choice early action as well. It's just another option for potential applicants. These options are part of the early admissions plan, which incorporates features of both early action and early decision. Almost think about if they had a little baby and they formed together. Parts of it are from both elements, and that's totally fine. So restrictive early action, it's non-binding. So kind of similar to early action in that regards. However, you may not apply to any other private schools early program except a college outside of the US, a non-binding rolling admission program, a public college or university whose admission is not binding, or an ED2 program if the notification of admission occurs after January 1st. So I'll put that in the chat because I know it's a lot of rules. Oh, it looks like Anna actually is kind of back. Oh, and I see someone said that she was talking a little bit about personal statements and supplementals. So yeah, I'll let Anna kind of take over where she's at. It looks like she's here again. Maybe. Sorry for the technical difficulties, everyone. But essentially, early action can be a little bit risky if you haven't been 100% prepared. If your essays aren't ready, if your supplementals aren't ready, it's almost better to do regular decision versus early action just for those. All right. So restrictive early action, though, single choice early action is a little bit less restrictive than ED because it's non-binding, but it is more restrictive than EA. You can only apply to more than one restrictive early action school, but the caveat, and especially for our BSMD students, and we'll talk about that a lot later, is you aren't obligated to attend. And so if you have your hopes set on attending schools like Stanford, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, or other choices that offer single choice or restrictive early action programs, applying single choice early action or restrictive early action is a good choice. However, you still have to make sure you have a strong application, kind of what Anna was talking about before, I'm assuming, about how your essays need to be ready. Your application needs to be 100% prepared. And like we said earlier, we can definitely help you with that final application review if you're kind of in that place. But you want to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward. It's not a good idea to rush this if you think that you do get an admissions and you do get an admissions boost. If you're going to put together a lackluster personal statement, that will hurt you more than that admissions boost will help you. Okay, let's look at our next thing. So let's talk a little bit about how much applying early admissions will help your odds of acceptance. We're going to talk about this a lot in the next slide for ED especially, but yes, it definitely does help you quite a bit. Oh, it looks like Anna is officially back. Yay! We'll let her in and I'll finish talking and I'll let her.
Sorry about that, guys.
No worries. So I finished talking about restrictive early action and all those kinds of things. And I'll just keep on going talking about how applying early will help you with your odds of acceptance. Early action can help a little bit because you're demonstrating some interest in the school by applying early. Could be nice because then you do have some applications out and done with. And then restrictive early action can, yes, help as well. So for example, Stanford has like a 4.5% acceptance rate for a regular decision, but their restrictive early action acceptance rate's like, 9%. It's double. It's still not great, but it's double. And it does help quite a bit. And so here are some of our things, our numbers about how those admissions from these last couple of years have really helped. And so for students who have a dream school that offers ED, then it really is a good idea to consider applying early. And this holds true for both BSMD students and traditional students. So let's say like your dream school is Northwestern, which does not have a BSMD program anymore, or if it was UPenn, which does not have a BSMD program, and that's your dream school. You might still want to consider applying early. We're going to go into this a little bit more in the next slide, but this definitely doesn't, there's no one size fits all for BSMD students, and so it could be a good idea for you. However, if you are a BSMD student, we can probably guess that you have good test scores, good grades. But for students who maybe are on the cusp, they should only apply early if their test scores and grades are within reach of the school, because then it can help tip the odds in your favor. We don't really want you to waste your ED chances on a university that you have no chance of getting into, even if there's a higher acceptance rate. So that's kind of one thing to think about. And unfortunately, more students can be admitted more students that can be admitted with our top scores, high test scores, near perfect credentials. There's just too many of them. There's only so many seats that can be given out. And so you really do want to take a realistic look at your scores and see what your chances of getting into. So for BSMD students alike, make sure to pick the perfect ED school where, it is your top choice. And another thing is to pick one where you can afford regardless of the financial aid package. And then, the last one is a university where you have a reasonable chance of getting accepted. It is just a little bit of a boost. But you guys can see here, the numbers are just kind of a little daunting as well for our traditional schools, where the number of classes filled by early apps, it's quite high. A lot of the times it's about 50%. So if you do have a dream school, this can be a really big school that's non-traditional, or that is traditional, non-BSMD. It can be a really good option to use this to increase your chances of getting it. Okay, there we go. Throw it to you, Anna.
So a lot of people ask why schools are kind of pushing for these early applications. And the big deal for the school is the yield rate. And that is the percentage of students they accept who actually choose to attend that university. So applying early is a way for schools to increase that rate because they know that you are committed to attending that school. So they kind of want to fill as many spots as possible with those kids that they know will be attending, because that is going to increase their yield rate. The colleges like Princeton has a really high yield rate. They're over 70%. And that makes them look like a very desirable school. So a lot of when you go to the rankings, a lot of people just search like best colleges in the US or top rankings. that's what they're looking at, is the yield rate for the schools. So the schools are trying to boost those yield rates. So really, it's a great resource for students to look into, because the colleges are wanting that so they can take advantage of them trying to increase their yield rates. Do you all have any questions about like the yield rates?
Easy enough. And so the big question about why you guys are all here is applying early a good idea for BSMD students? And the good news and bad news is there's no right or wrong answer. And, we will have 10 different BSMD students, and each student will have a different choice. Well, I guess not a different choice, but, make a different choice based on what's right for them. And so it really does depend, but there's kind of 3 options that a BSMD student can do. And that's apply to a BSMD program early decision. We'll get into which programs, at least some programs who have the early decision option. They can apply to a traditional school early decision or restrictive early action, as well as their BSMD programs. Or they can do no ED, no restrictive early action to either a BSMD or a traditional school, and just do early action, which is non-binding, or regular decision to all schools, which is also non-binding. And so we had a great question about an applicant can apply for multiple combined programs along with one ED program or for undergrad. Absolutely. We've had a lot of students who've done that, who maybe pick something like a UPenn, NYU, Duke, things like that, MIT for like I think they do restrictive early action. I can't remember if they do restrictive or ED, but things like that, as well as their BSMD programs. And we're going to talk about kind of the pros and cons of those decisions next, to kind of break down each one. But the first one is apply to a BSMD program early decision. And so for this one, the important thing to remember is you could get into the undergraduate program, but not the BSMD program. That's the important thing to understand, is that you are still technically obligated to attend the undergrad, even if you don't get into the program, because you're applying to the school and the program ED, not just the program ED, not just like Brown's, PLME program ED. You're applying to Brown itself. And so you have a decision to make. Is it the right choice for you? Like, would you still be super happy going to Brown if you didn't get into the PLME program? And for a lot of students, the answer is yes. But for other schools, maybe not. Maybe you do want to roll the dice. And so if you're accepted, you do have to withdraw all your other applications. And so the good news is, and I did see someone ask up above, where was it? Does Brown offer more admissions to their BSMD program for early decision versus regular decision? So yes and no. So typically they do spend about, 15, 20 students or seats to their ED applicants out of about their 70 to 80 seats. And then the rest will be regular decision. And so we talked to Nidhi, who is on our team, and she's a PLME student right now. And that's what she said, that the acceptance rates for PLME ED students was about 5%, which is a little bit better than like the 2-3% for the regular decision applicants. So is it better? Yes. Is it insanely better? Unfortunately, no. And so that's kind of something to think about. They do offer some seats. They do fill up quite a bit of their class, though, with their early decision applicants, and it can definitely help because, once again, you're demonstrating interest. And I think next we have some.
So if you do have that dream school, but then also you really want to see your BSMD options, you may really want to look into like a restrictive early action. Or you could look at the early decision, but like Lindsay just said, that one is going to be binding. So if you did the restrictive early action to a school, Princeton, that is a school you really want, but a BSMD is your ultimate goal, you would still be able to see the offers you would get from BSMD schools before you made that decision, and it will still help your chances of getting accepted. If you choose, because the restrictive early action is not binding, you would still have a little bit more choice there. And then what honestly most of my students are doing, I know, Lindsay, you said you have some doing early decision. Most of mine are doing the early action or the regular decision. So they don't have that admissions boost, but they kind of want to see any options that they have offered to them. And then they can make a decision about, what schools they want to look at. Financial, you can even see financial aid packages by then, interview schedules. So you have a lot more information to make those decisions. So if you're really just kind of, and we have a lot of students who say, like, I don't really have, a top during school. I want to kind of stay in this area and do this program. So that would be what they would be doing, just the early action.
Yep. And that's exactly right. That's what, whenever a kid is deciding, should I do ED? Should I just not do ED at all? I always ask them, like, what's their number one goal? Like, do you want to do BSMD over anything else? Or is it, do you want to attend Johns Hopkins over anything else? And so that's kind of the big decision to think about. What is the number one goal? And so, ultimately, some of my students have decided just to do Brown ED because at the end of the day, like I said before, you're doing ED, you're going to a great university that's really going to set you up for success. And so that's the big thing to think about. There's really no right or wrong way. And a lot of students I see doing a lot of different things, but ultimately that's what it comes down to. And because you do have to withdraw all your other applications if you do get into ED school, that's the one thing that I really stress to them. Like, are you happy not knowing what could have happened too? Because you won't even know about your interview request usually until, let's just say, January. And as Anna said earlier, you find out in December for your ED school. And typically you have like 2 weeks or so to pay your deposit and, kind of follow the rules of the ED school as well. So would you be okay not knowing forever, like if you could or couldn't have gotten into the BSMD program? So that's one thing that I always kind of stress to them too. It's like you wouldn't know. So it's not even like I guess you could turn down the ED option for like financial reasons, but once again, you're kind of rolling the dice there too because you don't even know if you will get an interview somewhere else or get accepted, even if you did get the interview. So it is a little bit of a risk with ED, but ultimately it depends on like what you're willing to risk. Is ultimately the main thing that we always stress whenever we're walking kids through this option.
And honestly, usually the students that do ED, it's not really even a decision they're going back and forth on. They are adamant, like, this is the school I want to attend. So, the ones that I have that are doing an ED program, like, they are for sure, that is their top dream school.
Yeah, exactly. And so the good news is you don't have to decide today. You have until November 1st to make your decision. And so there is only 3.5 weeks left before you do have to decide. But it would be the big thing to start thinking about, like, what are my priorities? And if you're younger, of course, you have a lot more time to think about that. But for our seniors, thinking about, okay, what's the right choice for me? Now, we've kind of alluded to some programs that do have some early decision options. And these are just like a small sampling case. Brown, NJIT, Rice, they all have like early decision options. So you could apply ED like we said before, commit to the school, but not to the program. And so once again, it's kind of weighing your priorities. If you would be happy going to Case, would you be happy going to Rice? Would you be happy going to NJIT? And for each school, or happy going to Brown too, of course. So for each school, like, your priorities might be different, your answer might be different, and that's okay. And your answer will be different from another student. I had one student maybe 2 or 3 years ago now, ED to Case Western's pre-professional scholars program. She did not get into the program, but she was more than happy to attend Case, and that was what she did. And so, of course, like, we had written all those applications, we had spent a lot of time and work doing it. We never know if it would have paid off, but at the end of the day, she was happy going to Case Western and got her great scholarship. And so everything worked out well for her, but we never would know what would happen. And so that's kind of the thing to think about. And so I see someone says, can you talk more about the Rutgers BSMD program? Yes, what would you like to know about it, I guess? For them, they only have the one application deadline, November 1st. No ED options there. You have the one essay, 600 words. So it's one of the best not one of the best, but it is a good program. It really helps students stand out. I don't really have much more to add. Do you have anything you'd like to add to that one, Anna? Unless we have some more specifics.
No, I mean, it's not a real extensive application. So, I mean, a lot of my students like adding that because it's not just a ton of extra supplemental essays and things.
Yeah, it is a top choice. I believe they are a little bit in-state heavy, but don't quote me on that. They are open to out-of-staters, but they do kind of prefer in-state. So our New Jersey residents are always lucky with their BSMD options. But yeah, it's a good one. And their medical school is a really good one too. I believe that they focus on patient care from really the beginning and a lot of underserved populations too. So if that is one of your priorities, it is a good option overall. It is competitive though. It is very competitive. I've had top students who've gotten interviews at other really great BSMD programs like George Washington, NJIT, which also filters into it, TC&J, which also filters into it, but not get interviews there. And so it is a really competitive one, probably the most competitive one with NJMS. Okay. And one thing before actually I move on is just to read the fine print for each BSMD program, because each BSMD program, as we know, is going to be very different. And so there are always exceptions to the rules. Like, so for example, Boston University is one that just does everything a little bit different from their letters of rec to the whole application process. They are a little bit different from everyone else. And so for them, you cannot apply ED. You can only apply under the regular decision applicants. And so that really is something to consider, is like, you can't do ED even though the university has the ED option. So pay attention really closely to what you're allowed to do if you have to apply it underneath a certain application type. And the other interesting things about Boston is that they, if you get rejected from the BSMD program, you get rejected from the school itself too. A little unfortunate, because Boston is a great university and a lot of kids would probably be super willing to go to Boston if they didn't get into their BSMD program even so. So that's something that if we do have a student who loves Boston, who really wants to go there, we kind of advise them, if that is your top choice, maybe the BSMD program isn't right for you just because it is so competitive, if you want to go to Boston over anything else. So another kind of wrinkle in that. That's kind of the only one like that, where if you get rejected from the school, you get rejected from the program. Okay. Let's see. Well, keep sending your questions. We'll do this one last slide and then we'll answer some questions too.
Okay, so the timelines, like we've already said, some of the timelines, I mean, they're coming up fast. We've already had, I know one, it was around one, but still, October 15th, we have some kids with some deadlines. November 1st, a lot of them, November 15th. So those early action deadlines are really going to be beginning of November. But then if you are ED, you're going to start finding out around mid-December, which is really nice. And then most of the regular deadlines are in January. Now, the thing is, you'll start getting some, if you are granted an interview for some of the BSMD programs, you'll start getting that information back in January, which is when some of the regular deadlines are. So that kind of tells you how helpful it is to go ahead and get those applications in early. And then around March or so, you'll start getting regular deadlines, early action deadlines released, March, April. And then May, you're making your decisions and deciding which school you're going to attend, which offer you're going to accept, and sending in your deposits.
And
it's a fast process.
Yeah. BSMD is definitely a marathon too, because it starts pretty early, November 1st or earlier. And then because you're preparing, you're hopefully already writing a lot. And then it goes, I mean, I had a student last year who's, I think, got an interview like first or second week of April. That's when his interview was. That's super late. And so I think he found out like on the 20th or so that he got in. And then I had another girl, I think it was actually for Baylor. She had an interview, but she didn't find out until like the 26th of April that she got into the program, or like the, late 20s, like a week before the deadline, deposit deadline. And that can happen. That can definitely happen. It's stressful. And so a lot of the times in December, our families start to get a little nervous because they haven't heard back from schools and the applications got sent in a long time ago. And that's pretty normal. You could hear back at any point. And so there is no one timeline for BSMD where all the decisions are going to be released at one point, just because that's just not how it works.
And just the information that these admissions offices are receiving, like by November 1st, it's just mountains of paperwork. So, I mean, it takes them a while to sort through everything and go through, and they're really trying to take their time to make sure, they're not missing students that would be good for the program. So it takes a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. Ooh, okay, let's answer a few questions. So what do you think about going to a BSDO and then applying to MD schools in your second, third year? So it depends on the program, because some programs you apply out for BSMD, BSDO, whichever ones. If you apply out, that means you give up your guaranteed spot. So I would really read the fine print carefully of each program to make sure that that is something you could do before you commit. And so really think about that beforehand. As for applying out and like shooting your shot, if you get a good MCAT score, if your GPA is high, if you've been doing all your extracurriculars, you've been volunteering, you have good clinical hours, you shadowed, you did some research, you didn't just kind of coast because you knew you had that guaranteed spot, there's absolutely no reason why you couldn't apply to MD schools too. I just wouldn't give up a guaranteed spot in DO schools for an MD spot. DO did typically have like a little bit of a worse stigma back in the day, but it's definitely changing. They've changed their accreditation system. MDs and DOs can go into the same specialties a lot easier now, and DOs are much more able to get into those competitive specialties as well. And so, especially if you want to do like more of like a primary care, DO is going to be, more than adequate. It's going to be really setting you up for success as well. So that is definitely an option, I would think. DO in general. Anything you want to add, Anna?
Nope, I think that pretty much covered it.
All right. Let's talk about case. What happens if a student chose the first major being pre-medical when they applied under ED, but got accepted by case and then a non-pre-professional major? I can't remember off the top of my head because it's December 1st deadline, so I haven't done it yet this year. Do you know what it is like, Anna, to apply? Do you pick your major to be pre-professional scholars? Is that what this is saying? Or is pre-medical just like biology? Would be my question.
Hold on.
I don't know if you've got some follow-up information you could type into us as well. I mean, I have had a student last year who did ED2 to NYU, and obviously non-BSMD. And she was interested in the neuroscience program, but she did not get accepted to the neuroscience program. She got accepted, and I could be wrong with this name. It was like a liberal core program where it was like a very different thing. After she had to be in this program within 2 years, and then after 2 years, she could transition to any major she wanted, including neuroscience. And because she did not get into really the traditional pathway program, she was in this separate program, her ED2 option was no longer binding. But, if you were to get into like a bio major, like if you applied for a bio major and you didn't get it, I wouldn't see why you wouldn't get into your bio major though, to be honest.
You can choose, this one you can choose from basically your choice of majors.
Yeah. If you're getting into the ED option, you most likely, it depends, I guess, on what the major was, but if it was like a biological sciences or, whatever, pre-med, there's probably and pre-med's usually not a major. There's probably no reason why you wouldn't get in, would be my my take on that, especially if you were a strong ED option at Case. It probably would still be binding. But that's my take on it. Anything you want to add to that one, Anna?
Nope.
Okay. Yeah, hard to say without more information, but I'm almost positive that you would probably get into your bio and you would still be under that pre-health advising situation. Okay. Did we miss any questions? I think we got them all. If you guys have any questions, we'll kind of do some wrap-up things. If you all have any questions, feel free to just keep sending them in. We'll stay on for a little bit more and answer them for you. But some logistical things. So actually, that reminds me, I did remember seeing someone said if there was a complete list of BSMD programs, absolutely. So if you go on our website, www.moonprep.com, and you scroll down to the bottom, there was a complete list of BSMD programs down there. You can get that for free. It's just like it will get emailed to you. I'll email you it a couple times just in case you missed it the first time. And so you'll get access to all of our resources too on our website. We've got things from how to write your personal statement, to interview prep, to financial aid, kind of everything from A to Z. So feel free to check that out. And we definitely do have a lot of webinars coming up too. But if you do want to work one-on-one with us, we can really help with anything. If you're a younger student, we can do resume building. If you're BSMD or a medical school student, we can do interview prep, both traditional and MMI, which is like the multiple mini interview, more scenario-based. We can help with the big one, essay writing. And we do convenient hourly packages, no long-term commitments. You also get a full refund of anything unused, so there's really no catch to our services. If you would like to get started, you can schedule a call with us. You can go on our website to learn more about our services and how, who and how you work with us. Or you can send me an email, lindsay@moonprep.com, and we can get you all sorted. And then just one last reminder for any new clients, we also do our application review. And if you are applying to the November 1st early action ED deadlines, really urge you to take advantage of this so that you can give yourself the best chance, as we talked about today. We don't want you to rush your application. We want to make sure you give yourself the best chance possible. So start considering taking advantage of this so that we can help you strengthen your essays, both your personal statement and your secondaries or your supplementals for any schools, working with like an experienced college counselor. And then last but not least, our goal for you is always to leave this webinar learning, feeling a little bit more confident. And so I'm going to paste our Facebook page on there. We would love for you guys to write a review for us if you have positive feedback. If you didn't enjoy this or you'd like us to do something a little bit different next time, and hopefully no technical errors next time too.
Yeah.
It's been following us for a couple webinars now. Please send me an email. I would love to hear your feedback. Or if you have any ideas of webinars that you'd like to see for like next year or things like that, we're always trying to come up with new ideas and new content for everyone. And we know that your time is valuable. So if you do email us or you have any like positive feedback that you put on Facebook, we'll send you like a free little freebie as well. Thank you. And then, oops, last but not least, here is our book again, just as a reminder. The complete list of all BSMD programs is on there. Tons of advice for you. Lots of insights about specific programs in general, the application process, kind of everything from A to Z. Yay! Thanks everyone for joining us. If you think of anything else, please send us an email. We'd be more than happy to give you some advice offline too.